Okay, our next interview is with Rob Rulon-Miller from St. Paul area. And Rob, would you just tell us a little bit about your background, family, schools, siblings, etc., where you grew up? Take us up through high school.
Through high school? Well, I graduated from high school, believe it or not, which was a sort of a remarkable thing. I grew up in Bristol, Rhode Island, and grew up around a lot of books in our house. My father had thousands of books in the house, and it was remarkable to me when I went into other people's houses. No one had any books, or very few books. So I was very spoiled in that regard. My grandmother, my father's mother, was also a book collector and a book binder. So books have kind of been in my blood for a long, long time. Went to Moses Brown School in Providence, Rhode Island, and graduated 69 out of a total of 72 students.
And you're proud of it?
Well, I'm not so sure I'm proud of it, but that's how it turned out.
Okay, and when did you start to get involved with the book trade?
I sold my first book in 1969. My father started the business, I think, about 1968 or 69. In his retirement, he'd been a collector and just wanted to be looking for something to do in his retirement, so he started a business called The Current Company. And I started working for him on summer times and holidays, and I think that was about 68 or 69. And I remember selling my first book, which was a book called The Sword and the Pen, which was a Victorian binding, very nice binding, but I sold that in 1969.
And then how long did you stay with your dad at The Current Company?
Well, let's see, that was 1969. I didn't join him full time. Actually, I worked for him for a number of years, holidays and so forth. I didn't join him full time until I graduated from college, which was 1977.
What college?
I graduated from Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York, and the reason for the gap between my graduation from high school and college is because I was so bad in high school that no colleges really would accept me. So I took a couple of years off, did some traveling, worked for my father, did a lot of sailing, of course, and joined him full-time in 1977, and that's about the time that he sort of was getting a little dodgy and really was looking to retire instead of just doing business retirement. And he was fortunate enough to have a place down in the Virgin Islands, and he pretty much retired down there, and I took over the business, I think, pretty much full-time by the first part of 78, and 78 was when I was first admitted to the ABAA. Warren Howell was president.
Who was your sponsor, do you remember?
George Goodspeed was one of them.
Really?
And I think he only did it because my father was a good customer and decided that, well, this kid should be in, I guess. If two sponsors were required, I don't know who the other sponsor was, but I know George Goodspeed wrote a letter on my behalf.
How long did you remain in Rhode Island after your dad left for the Virgin Islands?
Well, 1977, not only did I go to work full-time, that's when I also got married for the first time. And we went to, with my first wife, stayed in Rhode Island until probably about 1980 when my wife's father was diagnosed with lung cancer, a terminal situation. So we essentially moved to Minnesota so she could be with him. Ostensibly, we were going to return to Rhode Island. She didn't want to return. I did, and that was sort of the beginning of the end of that marriage. But being in Minnesota, I sort of recognized, my eyes got opened a little bit. As you know, all up and down the East Coast, there are many, many booksellers. And in Minnesota, there were very few. Mm-hmm. And I just had a couple of social contacts, and I got into some good libraries, and it all worked out. So I stayed.
Did you ever have a shop?
Never had a shop. My father had, in Rhode Island, in Bristol, we had a shop which was a made-over garage that we turned into a shop, that he turned into a shop. But that's pretty much the only time. We also had a little outlet, for lack of a better word, in Providence in the arcade building. That didn't really go too well. I think we had that for maybe 3 years. But ever since I've been in Minnesota, I've always worked out of my house.
So it's principally by appointment only type of situation. Yep. And you've issued a number of catalogs over the years in various formats. being your father's son, that's probably your biggest attraction to the book business. But tell me some of your recollections from your early years in the trade. Other than your father, who were some of the people who influenced you, some of the people who may have been mentors, some of the people you looked up to as the kind of bookseller you'd maybe like to be?
Well, I think my earliest memories of people in the book trade that are, that I can remember, Peter Stern and Doug Harding. I remember them coming down. My father hosted a chapter meeting, New England chapter meeting at his house. You might have been there too, but I don't remember you.
That's okay. It's not required.
But I do remember Peter and Doug, and Peter made a big impression on me. I think he's a little older, but not too much older. We're basically the same age, and he was. I liked him, and I thought to myself, these guys are all right. I could do this. My original plan was to become a college professor. I was going to be an English professor. That was my goal. But I liked Peter. Later on, once I got into Minnesota, and actually it was even before I got to Minnesota, I met people like Dan DeSimone, who's no longer a member of ABAA, but now at Library of Congress. And Dan introduced me to a lot of people in New York, notably Steve Weissman at Zimini's Rare Books. And Steve was he was my, if there's a mentor, it was Steve.
Yeah. I think a lot of booksellers your age would feel the same way.
He was terrific. I'd go in and I'd pull out a stack of books, and he says, "Okay, you can buy this. You don't want this.
Yeah, right.
Don't buy this."
Yeah.
And he was right. Or he'd pull out a book and said, "Here, you should buy this." And when he said that, you sort of stood up and listened, and walked away with a book.
Did you see him at all?
I saw him most recently at the last New York Book Fair. I run into him about once or twice a year. I mean, he shows up at the fairs. We correspond occasionally, trying to sell him a book, or if there's a book at auction in London or something. Occasionally, I'm in touch with him about that.
Talk a little bit about the internet and what influence it's had on you as a bookseller and your business as a business.
Well, that's a tough question, and I'm sure that's been answered many, many times by every person who's been here. We were very early on the internet. I think I was about the fourth or fifth ABAA person to have email. I mean, I had it very early on. I think we had a website very early on, too. I think originally, we sort of saw it as a boon. I mean, this was a great thing. We had books that we'd had on our shelves for a long time. Suddenly we were able to sell these things that we hadn't been able to sell for 10 or 15 years. But the more and more people who got involved with it, who got up there, all these books suddenly became, books that we thought were rare suddenly are not so rare anymore. Right. And especially for modern books, meaning books, I guess basically 20th century or last half of the 19th century, it was a race to the bottom for the prices. I mean, the more books that went up, everyone was trying to undercut the other person. And it got, as I say, a race to the bottom. But for the earlier books, or for books that were more unique, association copies, inscribed copies, in a way it almost helped them. Now, well, of course, we've been hit with a couple of things. The 9/11s, I think, took the wind out of a lot of people's sails for a while. It seems like we came back after 9/11, and of course the recession now has, I think, changed the nature of the business. I hope not forever. In fact, I'm thinking that now that all these books have been digitized, and I've lost a lot of business because of the digitization of books, that a lot of libraries are going to be deaccessioning books. And I think that the books are going to flood the market here. This is my prediction, maybe in the next 10 years. And I think it's going to be just like after the Reformation, when all the monasteries closed. This is going to be a great time for collectors. The price structure is all going to change. Yeah. The prices are going to come down. But I believe that there's going to be a renaissance of book collecting here in the next 10 or 15 years. That's my hope.
Well, a lot of us would like to see that. Let's shift gears for a little bit and talk about the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, I think you're the only person I know who has held every office.
Not true. I've never been secretary, although
okay.
if called upon,
you will. You will.
I'd be happy to do it. It's very interesting with the ABAA, because I got involved because mostly after Johnny Jenkins' murder, and there was as you know, big flap about the Texas forgeries and so forth, and everyone was sort of bad-mouthing ABAA, especially the other associations in Europe, and it kind of made me mad. And I got involved mostly to sort of clean up the act a little bit at ABAA. And I don't know if I did a good job or not. They kept me on for a long time, so I must have done something.
What time frame are we talking about here?
Well, I got involved with the Midwest chapter. Of course, I was in Minnesota by then, of course. I got involved in the Midwest chapter. I think I became chapter president there, I think in '87 or something like that. You've got notes, so you may know the answer to this better than I do.
No, I have no notes.
I think 1987, I came on the board and I began attending. I was really interested. I mean, I was serious about it, and not only me. Jennifer Larson was also very serious about it. Peter Howard was serious about it, and Jeff Marks too at the time. We were all sort of really focused. And anyway, I became a board member. I think in '89. You were president, as I remember.
Yeah.
And I remember the first task that you assigned me, or one of the tasks you assigned me, was to be the first newsletter editor.
Right.
And I was happy to do that, and did that for 17 years. Hard to
did a hell
believe.
of a good job with it, too.
Thank you.
Who took over the newsletter after you finally got it?
Well, Susan took it over, and
Okay.
I don't know, maybe she did 4 or 5 hard copy issues, I can't remember. And now, of course, it's all online. There's no more hard copy. But we did 17 years of hard copy. And in that period there, I was also editing for a couple of years the iLab newsletter, but we don't have to talk about that.
No, we're going to talk about mainly the ABAA. The book trade today is a lot different than it was when you first started in it. Talk a little bit about, other than the fact that books are going to flood the market at some point, in your opinion, talk a little bit about what you see. We've been accused of being an aging group, a group that's all over a certain age, and there are no young booksellers, and I don't think that's true. I think there are a lot of good young booksellers.
I agree. I think there are. All you got to do is look to people like, Kevin Johnson or Lorne Bear or Brian Cassidy.
Garrett Scott.
Ian Brabner. These guys are actually all quite brilliant booksellers. And looking at them, I'm not afraid because I'm old enough to know how to, put bread on my own table, but these guys are good. And they're better at book selling now than I was when I was their age.
Same age, yeah.
And I think it's because of them that's going to bring other people into the trade. The same way, when I met Peter Stern, oh, these guys are okay. I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are other young people who are meeting, these guys and maybe saying the same thing. The big question, of course, is are the collectors going to be there? And look, Mike, there are, I don't know how many billions of books on this planet. The books aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a market for them. There are always going to be people buying and selling them. And, fashions change. The trend nowadays seems to be more towards ephemeral material or manuscript material, stuff that's a little bit more unique, stuff that's not in libraries.
A lot of pictorial stuff.
A lot more visual stuff. And I'm even buying books now. I don't know if you saw, I just did a big web catalog last week of all these medical almanacs, medical quackery.
Yeah, I saw it.
Very colorful, and it was incredibly, it was mostly inexpensive stuff, but it sold very well. Everyone was very excited about it, and great. I felt good.
Just another arrow in your basket there.
Well, I don't know. It's another arrow shot.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the Colorado Book Seminar.
Yep.
The shirt that you're wearing proudly, and a shirt that I wore proudly myself. Just run us through when you started getting involved and to bring us up to where we are right now. A little history.
Well, I came out there for the first time, I think, in the year 2000. In fact, I know it was the year 2000. And Jeff Marks and I had gone out there because Jennifer was on the faculty, and we'd all done the Denver Book Fair, and Jeff and I were off on a scouting trip. And I think for the first day or two, we just sort of hung out in Colorado Springs. And I didn't really think anything of it, you know. But the following year, I guess Jennifer invited us back to be, in 2001, that's the shirt I'm wearing here. Jeff and I were the specialty dealers that year, and we did our little dog and pony show, and we stuck around for most of the week, and it was, we just had a great time. And I can't remember, you might be able to fill in the blanks here, I can't remember, I don't think we became faculty, yeah, we did become faculty members the next year.
Next year.
But that was not the year that we became owners. I think
no, it's probably 2004 or 5.
I think 3 or 4. Anyway, it wasn't right away. But and we'd gotten Dan DeSimone, who we've already mentioned, to come out as a specialty dealer, or a keynote speaker, I guess. He wasn't even a dealer at the time. And Dan became sort of enthralled with it the same way that I became enthralled with it. So Dan and I coughed up a little money because, as you know, the seminar was beginning to fall on hard times.
Beginning?
And this was, I think, you know, the internet, you were a victim of the internet there. We were a victim of the internet. And we coughed up a little money. I wish we could have coughed up more, but we didn't. But anyway, we sort of changed the curriculum around and got some new faculty involved. And you know, it took a year or two, but it began to work. And to this day, it still works. I was director, I think, from 2003, 2004 to pretty much just this year, when, of course, I had some medical problems. And Kevin Johnson from Royal Books has stepped to the fore. He's taken over, and he's going to do a great job. I remain on the faculty. We've become a nonprofit. We became a nonprofit organization in 2008 or 9, I can't remember. And we now have a board of trustees or a board of directors or whatever we call ourselves. And actually just resigned as president of that. I'm now vice president. But anyway, I feel very proud that we kept it going, and it serves a great purpose.
Talk a little bit about what the upcoming year is going to have. Who's going to be? Do you have a keynote? Do you have a specialty dealer?
We've been trying for years to get Nicholson Baker to come, and for I think the second or third year in a row he hasn't responded. So I think we've got his answer. We don't have a we don't have a keynoter this year yet. Our second on our list is Kathy Lieb, and Terry Ballinger, who's also a part of the faculty and on the board. In fact, he's calling her perhaps even as we speak. Our specialty dealer next year will be Nina Musinski of Musinski Rare Books in New York. And if you haven't interviewed her, I think her story is pretty fascinating too. So you should.
It's coming up for April.
Great.
Okay, talk a little bit now about some of the things that you see as. Well, I think you may have said something about the challenges that we're going to be coming up against, but I'd like to know what your perspective is about. Here we are as a trade. Where are we going? Where have we been? What's the future going to look like? Are people going to be wanting to buy rare books 20 years from now? Are people going to look at rare books as being objects or as being collectible or what? What do you feel?
Well, one of the things that's changed, you know, for years and years and years, I sold books because of the information they contained.
Right.
The example I always use is, you know, one of my specialties was books on language, history of language. And, you know, someone reading Cervantes, for example, you know, some scholar, they needed a 16th century or Spanish grammar so that they could understand the language of Cervantes. And it didn't matter if it was the 4th edition or the 6th edition. You know, they could find the $200 or the $300 they needed to buy these books. And that was bread and butter for us for a long, long time. Now, of course, because of the digitization of books, people don't need the books for information. They need them. If they want them now, I think they want them purely as the artifact. And so I think that books that are in really nice condition, gorgeous condition, books with extraordinary illustrations, books in extraordinary bindings, you can sort of pick your little area there. Those books there'll continue to be a market for those books, and I think those books, there'll be a strong market for them. But for an average copy of a piece of New England history with faded and chipped spine and hinges cracked, a book that we probably might have sold at one time for 125 or 150 bucks, I think at 10 bucks, even then you might not be able to sell it now. So there's a lot of these books, this is what I talk about how the price structure has changed. A lot of those books have been hammered in the marketplace. Whereas the ones that are really extraordinary, I think have certainly held their value, and a good number of them I think have done better than that.
What percentage of your business is through catalog, through the internet, through book fairs, through people coming to your house?
Well, I used to get a lot of people coming through the house because people used to scout.
Yeah.
People are not scouting as much anymore. They're scouting maybe the internet, but they're not traveling to do it. I still do it and love to do it. And I think that you can find things that people don't have online when you get into someone's house or shop,
right.
Get into the back room or whatever, and you'll find stuff. Or people that people don't know how to price it, but they see that you're an ABAA member or something, and they'll pull something out and say, "What do you think about this?"
Right.
So you're able to scouting certainly still exists. So that's what I think about people coming to the house. No, it doesn't happen much anymore. Even now, we have the Minnesota Book Fair every year, and even though it's a sort of a modest fair, we used to have people. I could sell $10,000 worth of books when people came through. I bet the last 3 or 4 years, if I've sold $1,000 each
really?
fair, that's just not happening. What's the other part of your question? You're asking about libraries and.
No, I'm asking about your walk-in business, your catalog business. Your book fair business, your internet business.
Catalog business to this day, and I'm including online catalogs now too, because we're doing more and more of that just because of the cost of printing and the cost of postage. The online catalog, the catalog business still accounts for the majority of my income. That's where we sell most of our books. I'm not a big quoter. I'm not a very social guy. In fact, I'm a pretty lousy businessman too. I just love the books. I'd rather just sit home and catalog books all day. If I could do that, that would just be a wonderful thing. But I have to get out and I have to sell and I have to keep my face out there. So, that's why I do the fairs and I get to see my colleagues and everything. I'd say fairs account for probably, 15 to 20% of my business, something like that. Catalogs probably 40%. I probably do another 15 to 20% online. Direct quotes, maybe another 15%. That's only 85% of my business, and I don't know what the other 15% is.
What difference does it make? It's there.
I don't know.
It's there.
But the thing, everyone always asks about catalogs, and they're so expensive, they're so difficult to do, and so forth. I still think catalogs are great, and they're great advertising. When you put stacks of them out here at the book fair, people take them away, and a week later, someone calls up and they say, "We got this," and maybe you do, maybe it's sold, but you've got a customer.
What about from your customer point of view? What percentage would you say are library customers? What percentage are private customers, and what percentage are your colleagues?
Well, it used to be. I don't know what it is anymore. Things have changed. Yeah. It used to be pretty much a third. I was pretty lucky. I think I had about a third private, third institutional, and the other third went to the trade. Don Heald came out once, and of course that year, this was after I had a big collection that you knew about. That came out of Minnesota. Don Heald came out and bought all sorts of stuff, and I think Bill Reese came out and bought all sorts of stuff. And of course that year, probably 80% of my business was to the trade. But I don't know what it is now. I'm actually doing in the middle of this recession, I was trying to do as much appraisals as I could, because and that may be another 5% of my business too. I should, sort of the appraisal business. But I lost my train of thought. And you weren't even listening, because you can't help me.
I can help you. You were talking about the percentage of your business.
Now, I was going to say, during the recession, I was trying to do as many appraisals as I could just to keep the cash flow going.
Right.
And surprisingly, I'm selling a lot to institutions now, more than private, because the privates have just
disappeared for some.
And it's not that they don't have money. It's a psychological thing, I think. I know people who have 20, 30, 40, 50, millions and millions of dollars who could easily spend, $10,000 on a book or whatever, but they're not doing it just because they feel like,
we're in a recession.
We're in a recession, and we have to save and conserve and so forth. And the trade's not buying like it used to either.
No.
But that goes back to why they're not coming through my house to scout. Same reason.
It's all part of the internet and all part of the recession.
Yep.
One last question before I let you go. If someone were to come to you and say, Mr. Rulon-Miller, what do you think is the most important thing I should do or know about if I wanted to go into the book business?
Don't call me Mr. Rulon-Miller. Call me Rob.
Is that the most important thing?
It's an extraordinary business, and the collegiality is remarkable. You have a question about something, I don't care, you can go to just about anyone who has a specialty in whatever field that you have the question in, you're going to get the answer. Or if you don't get the answer, you're going to get a referral to someone who will give you the answer. We all do this because we love what it is we do, not because, if anyone's in this, there may be some exceptions, but if there's anyone in there who's really in there just to make money, they're probably in the wrong business. It's a brotherhood, a fraternity, and I get a little weepy in a way when I think about it.
It's a wonderful, wonderful group of people that we're associated with.
And I wouldn't trade it for nothing. I can't do anything else anyway, so I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of stuck with it. But it's the people that have kept me in this business.
That's great. Thanks very much, Rob. Enjoyed it.
Yep.
Thanks
Thank you.